Welcome to the video, everybody. Today we're breaking down a new addition to Russia's Ghost Fleet oil tankers. It used to be in Venezuela's Ghost Fleet, but now it has raised the Russian flag in this game of chess, trying to get through the naval blockade and get into Venezuela. This ship was turned around from the blockade and it went back into the North Atlantic. But I'm going to break down the worst nightmare of these ghost ships and the worst nightmare of Venezuela and the Maduro regime at this point with the naval blockade and where the situation goes from here. And I'm going to talk to you about an organization that is, relatively near and dear to my heart because of how much they love acronyms. And that is the Maritime Special Purpose Forces within the Marines, the MSPF. Those beautiful acronyms, and they're going to keep coming. This will be an acronym-heavy episode, but they're within the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit that are special operations capable, and we're going to talk about why this developing situation with the Marinera, not that delicious sauce that you put on your pasta, but now a Russian ghost ship that is a part of this whole Venezuelan empire trying to get their oil sold to keep their economy flowing. So we're going to talk about the strategic implications of this, why it looks like now Venezuela is trying to play 4D chess. We'll talk about the staging of this vessel, where it transferred into the Russian name and why it has the Russian flag flying and what implications that makes for the naval blockade. But again, the naval blockade is packed full of that 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. And we're going to break down the Marine Expeditionary Unit, how they play into the situation, and how different teams within that organization are the worst nightmare of Maduro and the cartels. When it comes to special operations forces, the Marines in this organization are literally at the point of the spear. Navy SEALs, you're cool and all. Don't worry, Navy SEALs, everybody, you're okay. You're still awesome. I want to pat the ego. You're still good. But these Marine teams are next level, and we're going to dive into their capabilities throughout this video. So let's go ahead and jump in. We got a new sizzle reel coming out of the 22nd MEU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit. Let's just go ahead and take a peek while I kind of review everything that I'm seeing in this organization and what they're going to be doing on these different ship seizures. So that's the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit. We'll talk about some of their roles, how they team up with air power, and then the Caribbean operations, as you see right here with those rigid hull inflatable boats. They're a massive part of Operation Southern Spear. You could argue that they are the pointy end of the tip of Operation Southern Spear when it comes to combating these transnational terrorist organizations that are now being targeted on land, they're targeted at sea. So again, having a force that is amphibious, basically lives and breathes in the amphibious environment, is probably the most capable force at this point. Marine Recon, again, some of the most capable operators when it comes to the amphibious and the sea environment. But again, they are flagging and they are tagging and they are chasing down the new Marinera. So it used to be the Bella 1, but that tanker has evaded the U.S. pursuit so far, and it's turned to the North Atlantic, to the high seas, and now they've painted the Russian flag onto this vessel. So we'll talk about this cat and mouse game, where we go from here, and the decisive interdiction that's going to happen from these Marine teams. So just a highly capable force. So let's do a quick review of the MEU, the Marine Expeditionary Unit. It consists of more than 2,200 Marines and sailors who embarked on the Iwo Jima Amphibious Readiness Group, the ARG, in August of 2025. The MSPF that we talked about, it provides specialized raiding and reconnaissance capabilities for maritime crises, like as we can see right here. Those raiding capabilities are going to be the most important part of this naval blockade at this point, having the teeth to go in and take these ships. And then you have these maritime assault ships that just look like motherships where they can operate out of with the different equipment that they need to make this happen. But they primarily are focusing on these anti-narcotics vessels, right? They're being struck. There's rumors that SEAL Team 6 is leading the charge. I wouldn't be surprised if parts of the MEU are leading the charge as well with their amphibious capabilities. But against Venezuela, the assets from the Marines here, they are really a primary focus on taking down the flow of oil. That's kind of their main, that's the number one thing. When we look at this region here, how big of a swath of ocean this is, it's no small question why this tanker was able to evade as they turned north. Because if all the air power and sea power, amphibious power is focused here, then turning around and going this direction is, obviously the best way, and play that cat and mouse game to try to get away from these specialized Marine teams. But in response to these new developments, these teams are now they're positioned to shadow and interdict stateless dark fleet vessels like the Marinera, formerly the Bella 1. That's an oil tanker that was built in the 1990s, and it's been sanctioned for carrying Iranian oil shipments and for now Venezuelan oil shipments as well. So on December 20th of 2025, a little bit of background, it evaded a U.S. Coast Guard chase by re-registering itself now in Russia. So it's been evading, it re-registered itself in Russia, and now it's got said to be a crudely painted on Russian flag on the Marinera. It's just so funny that they called it the Marinera. Makes me hungry. They're sitting on there, it's like the mafia bosses. They're like, yeah, we used to be Italian mafia, now we're Russian mafia, so we're going to call it the Marinera. We're going to call it the Marinera for Mother Russia. So it's a very interesting position that they've put themselves in. They've got that Russian flag on the hull. So what does that mean for these Marine Expeditionary units? We'll talk a little bit about that here. But again, it's being shadowed right now, and it's not being allowed to come through. So it's not like, okay, you got the Russian flag painted on, now you're immediately allowed to come through. So my guess is these forces are even in a more offensive posture to board and seize this ship at this point, because it's still being traced and tracked by the State Department as being an illicit oil tanker. So this Marine Corps Readiness Group, though, they're going to be ready to pounce this thing as soon as it gets within basically a veil where they can keep resources to get the ship back to the U.S. They can keep resources to prevent any boat swarms that could be happening. But the deployment of the MEU, it launched on August 14th of 2025, and they are the kind of the heart, I would say, the point of the spear, the heart of the naval blockade at this point. So when you think about the capabilities, so there's Marine Interdiction Operations, all right, the MIO. So when we looked at that video, that sizzle reel, it's kind of like this, the Marine Interdiction Operations. This is how I think of them. This is how capable they are. So this highlights everything. This is the MIO. This is what they do. Super specialized. This dude is freaking amazing. So just replace the garbage that he's doing with seizing vessels. This is how much of an athlete they are. When I think of teams that are athletes, go out, make it happen, be an athlete. I think of the MIO, that Marine Interdiction Operation. That team, they encompass vessel boardings, searches, seizures, and they demonstrate how well they do this in a lot of the videos that have been released, seeing them board different vessels. So they're basically, as much of an athlete at that as this guy is at, being a badass when it comes to his garbage collection. You got to love a guy that loves his job. So when I think of these specialized operators, these specialized teams, I think of athletes and I think of people that love their jobs. All right, so that's enough of that. You guys get the point there. Definitely very impressive there. But this is a picture of the Bella 1, now the Marinera, right? So this is the stealthy, they're calling it the stealthy vessel. It just basically turned around, but it looks like they haven't captured it yet, and it's changed the name to Marinera. That's what this post is saying, and it's staying in the North Atlantic while they're probably getting information from Russia on what their rights are, what their rules are, and what they're able to do as far as now maybe trying to get through the naval blockade. Does the naval blockade now just part because they're named the Marinera, and they just changed the name on their vessel? We'll see as things develop here. But the MIO, that's the athletes that would go on and actually board this thing. They would do searches and seizures. The raids and reconnaissance would also involve helicopters, small boat insertions for hits on vessels like this, or even coastal hits when you think of what these Marines are capable of. And then they could also be doing target surveys. So these amphibious teams from the MIO, they could be doing target surveys along the coast to see what they should be targeting. Like they're just such. I love it when there are forces that are highly adaptable and their mission is something that enhances the mission of the entire operation. So they're called force multipliers. That's what we would call it in the fighter world, where you have F-22s, F-15Es. They're force multipliers because you basically take out, entire battalions of the enemy with a 4-ship of these different jets. Force multipliers, and that's what the MIO is. They're a force multiplier because you could go in, strike certain places in a port, and oh, by the way, get strategic intelligence and reconnaissance while you're there. I mean, if you can't tell, it just makes me a little bit excited. This operation with a scalpel, going in for operations like this, using these highly skilled teams to do it instead of massive amounts of boots on the ground, it just makes sense. If you guys have been following the channel for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of retrenchment, okay? So retrenchment, when we think of the strategy of it, retrenchment means you go in, you strike the heart of the snake, boom, well, head of the snake. You take off the head of the snake and then you go back. You don't do a massive GWOT, Global War on Terror move where you put FOBs, forward operating bases, at the bottoms of canyons. We're not doing that anymore, guys, okay? Strategic, going in with a surgical scalpel to root out the head of the snake, and then you go back, wait for it to regrow, and then you go back again. That's kind of what I see as the MIO's their special operations. A big part of that is the ability to go into these ports that a lot of these boats now, these narco boats, are being made in, and then striking those or getting the intelligence they need, having other assets strike those, and then you go back and then you just do it again and again and again until you wear down the enemy. And at some point, Maduro's going to see that he's cornered. He's that wolf backed into the corner, but there's a lot of other wolves around him waiting, and that is Maduro's inner circle. But let's talk a little bit about the air power integration that is going down. So we saw recently the MV-22 Osprey as a part of these strike packages, or potential strike packages. And when you think of all the little islands all around where these drug smuggling boats could be going to, if I was a drug smuggler on these little islands, I wouldn't be sleeping well on the stopovers as they refuel, as they drop off drugs at austere little strips. You guys know I love the word austere. I think someone was playing a coffee drinking game with every time I said the word austere, and they had like 20 sips of coffee by the end of a video. You're welcome. But some of these small islands out in the middle of nowhere, CV-22 insertions, these rigid hull boat insertions, and with these amphibious gangsters, let's just call them what they are. These Marine teams are essentially the biggest amphibious gangsters in the military of the entire world, in my opinion. Them being able to go in with the MV-22 Ospreys, those have that vertical lift. But here's another thing too with these units, these assault units, AH-1Z Vipers. Those are attack helicopters. They're variants of the Cobra that have been updated, highly capable helicopters, rocket pods, Hellfires, machine guns. I mean, very capable. These things going into these jungle strips where they're going to try to load some of these drugs onto Learjets, maybe even loading them onto Beach Bear and aircraft. Those are twin engine aircraft, trying to get these things loaded up. You have an AH-1Z, just kind of swing by and give a little visit from one of these Marine teams. Highly capable for that to happen there as well. So when I look at the real world ability of these teams to go in and strike down, not only board these vessels, not only go in and take the new Marinera, which if it comes through the naval blockade, if you have the different, you trace the different whereabouts of this thing, it's obviously not a Russian tanker. It's using that as a part to join. It's basically using that as an ability to join the dark fleet of tankers. So if you see this capability of these Marine teams go in, they can take this vessel down. Then they can take down the different hubs along the different islands that are spread out, the airstrips that could be launching those Beach Barons. And then you have the ability to mark targets as well while you're there. But a lot of it's going to include the MV-22 Osprey for air integration, AH-1Z Vipers, and then also F-35Bs. You got F-35Bs launching off of these assault ships. So now you have the triple threat. So you have the ability to insert these teams. You got the ability to back up these teams with the AH-1Z Viper. And then you've got the ability to do larger strikes with JDAMs with the F-35B. So it's really this force that is making all these different narco terrorists not sleep well at night. But a little more on the Marinera. So the crew's refusal to stop basically shows that they are a part of the dark fleet. And here's what I think the MIO team strategy could be. So immediately they're going to be doing shadowing, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Their teams are going to deploy via helicopters. F-35Bs will be doing overwatch as well. And then they'll track it via real-time feeds from MQ-4C Triton drones, knowing exactly where this thing's going. That is not going to be an issue. So having the MQ-4C Triton drones just fully aware of these swaths of ocean, and then all the different little islands are going to be dotted through here that could be stopover points for these narco terrorists as they leave. This is the port where the CIA led the strike on the shipyard. So again, their routes are going to be up here, go north. So you leave that port with a lot of legitimate, infrastructure around it, and you're just shadowing. You go here, and then there's little islands along the way. You could be stopover points. This could all be tracked by the MQ-4C Triton drone, and then you just pass that information to these Marine teams, and it's going to be game over for a lot of those different teams. So using them versus Venezuela, you got to think about the deterrence tier first, which doesn't seem necessary to be working because we've seen a lot of boat strikes happening recently, just within the last few days. I'll see if I can pull that up. Here, we'll go to X and check that out. But the different boat strikes, there's been 3 different of them here in the last few days. So let's just go ahead and look into that narco boat strike. I want to bring this up because I think it's important. Just seeing this happen in the last few days, I think there's been like 2 or 3 strikes that have happened here. So here we go. Yeah, so this one, Southern Command released this. So 3 boats being tracked. Again, formations. Now they're trying different things. So that's a nice pepper pattern there. Probably a Hellfire with an airburst striking that down. But then there is a few other options that look like they're being used as well. So this looks like the second strike happening here. Yep, that's a direct hit as well. Center mass looks like, okay, now you see some shots coming in. So this is what I wanted to bring up. So this could be coming from AH-1Z, so those Zulu helicopters, or even AC-130Js, gunships taking down these vessels as well. As you can see, the direct hit isn't happening, right away. It's not like a Hellfire hitting directly on the ship. So that could mean that this is the attack helicopters from these Marine units actually going out and making this happen. So wanted to give you guys an overview of that. But also think about these teams doing helicopter inserts. So you can see in this photo here, helicopter already over top of it. But helicopter inserts is another thing they can do. And then airfield seizures is actually one of their main operations that these Marine teams are known for. So airfield seizures is something that they're likely going to be doing as well. And that's something that hasn't been talked about a lot. But if you're going to be taking down these different narco shipyards, you got to take down the narco jets as well. The narco turboprop engines, King Airs, all the different aircraft that are being used by the narco terrorists as well. But now geopolitically, there is going to be more calculus because Russia has basically allowed this ship to be registered within their shadow fleet. Russia has over 100 of these shadow fleet oil tankers that they allow to be registered within Russia. And a part of the deal is probably, hey, we'll allow you to register this ship, Venezuela, with us, and now we'll give you some protection. But now you have to buy more of product X, Y, or Z to refine your sulfuric oil, things like that. So as you guys can see, these Marine teams, highly capable, so I wanted to give you guys some information on them, some background on them. I expect we'll see lots more operations with these amphibious gangsters here in the next few weeks, next few months. But appreciate you guys watching. Thanks so much for being on the channel. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Hope you and your family are doing great. Go ahead and follow me on X, follow me on Instagram, and then watch one of these videos that pop up right here. It's pretty much the best compliment you can give me. So I'll see you in one of these videos that pop up right here. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, signing off.